Welcome to another episode of Well, Don't Tell the Kids. I'm Janet Lee, your host, and today my guest is Provost Jonathan Holloway. I want to thank you very much for joining me today, Provost.
Happy to be here.
Jonathan joins us for a conversation from the Windy City in Chicago, in Illinois. You are new to town there.
Yeah, very new to town. We moved here midsummer in July, and I began my term as provost on August 1st.
You're the newly appointed provost at Northwestern University in Evanston and Chicago campuses. I don't think that you're a Midwesterner.
No. My wife and I actually have lived exclusively on the coasts. Now, we've been to Chicago before, and we started to try to tally it up, and we think cumulatively across our lifetimes, we've been in the Chicagoland area for a total of 2 weeks. For me, it was coming to either Northwestern or Chicago for conferences, or University of Chicago for conferences or papers or research, but very little experience. But across those cumulated 2 weeks, we really thought, all right, when the possibility of being a candidate for the job came up, all of our experiences have been wonderful, and we loved the area, and we became curious. So it was a roll of the dice in a way at the beginning, and it has been just fabulous since we arrived.
Oh, good. I'm glad. We're coming into the winter months soon.
I know. Well, I visited a lot this past winter, but I know it was a mild winter. But we've spent the last 20 years in Connecticut, so we are braced a little bit for this already.
See, let's go back a little before we get to the Connecticut years. You studied at Stanford and earned your Bachelor of Arts in American Studies, from what I understand.
That's right.
What drew you to that field to begin with? Way back when?
Gosh, I wish I had a very eloquent answer for you. But the fact is, I had arrived at Stanford knowing I was going to be a sports medicine specialist, doctor, surgery. Then I remembered about 6 weeks into calculus that I was terrible at math and didn't like science. And so the question was, what do I major in? I wanted to declare a major fairly early on because I felt a little bit at sea. And I'm embarrassed to admit it, but it's true. This was back in an era when language requirements knowing a foreign language wasn't required at universities, across the board. But history and English, my two likely majors, both had a language requirement. I'm like, but I don't want to take a language requirement. I'd taken Spanish in high school and sort of tested out. And I looked at American Studies, and they didn't. And honestly, because of that, and because the major seemed a nice mixture of English and history, that's what I'll do instead. And so I didn't know what I was getting into, but I fell in love with it, actually.
You continued on to receive your doctorate from Yale University in history.
Yes.
And could you tell us a bit about your research focus there that you did for your doctorate?
Sure. Well, it actually goes back to Stanford a little bit. I had no sense of going to get a PhD in history, and it was 6 weeks before I graduated college when a professor I was taking classes with in American Studies asked me what my future plans were, and he's the one who put the idea into my head. There's a longer story behind it, I won't bore you with, but he really put the idea in my head that this would be a great thing for me to consider. So this guy, with whom I'm still in touch actually, he saw something in me. And then the debate was, well, do I pursue a PhD in history or in American Studies? And, ended up deciding on American Studies. And he and my two other advisors all said that you should apply to Yale because you don't know exactly what you want to do, and it's got a big history department. There'll be someone to work with no matter what you end up focusing on. And if you get in, you should go. Just don't even ask any questions. And I had the good fortune of getting in, and I went. Then sort of stumbled my way forward into the work that I ended up focusing on.
And what was your...
Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
Do you remember your dissertation title?
Oh, yeah. I got caught up in the backstory there.
We love backstory around here.
In my first year, I was taking a range of different types of courses, different methodologies of how you pursue history. And, all of this was brand new to me. I had no idea. And then I stumbled into... I was taking a course on intellectual history, the history of ideas or the people who create these ideas, and started, fiddling around and just based on conversations with professors, found out about this group of professors working at Howard University in Washington, D.C. in the 1930s. Really interesting stuff relating to race and politics and economics. And so I started to poke around and discovered that basically nothing was written on these individuals. And so what was just a research paper turned into, when I realized how much archival material was available and how little was written, I by accident stumbled into my dissertation in my first year, and it ended up being a dissertation. The subtitle has certainly changed when I published it, but it was called Confronting the Veil, and the veil is a reference to a phrase that the great thinker W.E.B. Du Bois coined about the veil that separates blacks and whites. I mean, so it's Confronting the Veil. The book title is Abram Harris Jr., E. Franklin Frazier, and Ralph Bunche, 1919 and 1941, I believe. And these three people were these three radical intellectuals who were at Howard University during this interwar era, and were really quite important for thinking about race and social science and economics and all these different issues, and were really unexplored, essentially. So this is who I started to work on, and ended up writing a dissertation that was not just about their ideas, but also about Black Washington as a physical space, because Howard University was so pivotal to understanding Black Washington and vice versa. And that was my journey into the dissertation, and then a short brief on the topic itself.
Confronting the Veil, and three persons at Howard University in Washington. I'm in the Washington metro area here calling.
Oh, okay.
So I think I'll jump ahead and then circle back, because you've opened the jar now, opened Pandora's box. I studied at the McCormick School of Engineering and in the graduate school, actually Northwestern, and I had some EE courses taught by one Professor Arthur Butts, and he is a Holocaust denier.
Oh, yes.
And he was censured 2006 by his faculty and President Beenan. I have a quote here. The quote is from President Henry S. Beenan. Therefore, we cannot take action based on the content of what Butts says regarding the Holocaust, however odious it may be, without undermining the vital principle of intellectual freedom that all academic institutions serve to protect. President Beenan. So just wondering, in our tumultuous current events and day and age, and just based on your long experience, any comments about that and maybe relating to your new position as provost? So
I had never heard of this individual prior to taking the job, and I've been in the office, been in position for about a month. It must have been end of August where somebody mentioned their great frustration of this guy. I'm like, wait, who are you talking about? And then someone gave me the short history. I'm like, oh dear God. So especially during this particular era that we're in, this really painful era, to have somebody on the faculty who holds these views is horrible, I think. When I asked more about it, like, how is this guy still on the faculty? And what I've been told, I've never met him, what I've been told is that he is very careful to make sure his personal ideas are not part of his teaching, is not part of his pedagogy, it's outside of the curriculum. And that puts the university in a really horrible position, in my opinion. His ideas are odious. They're, for every I know it's nothing to add to what Henry Beenan said years ago, but the fact is these are his personal ideas, and they aren't part of what he teaches. So the problem is, if we were to try to remove him from the faculty, what it's saying is that any idea, whether, an idea that it's uncomfortable now may not be comfortable later on, or vice versa. Any personal idea, and up for not beyond censure, up for getting somebody removed, and that is its own Pandora's box right there. And what this means to me is that when called upon to comment on somebody like this, is like, you make it clear that from my own personal standpoint and from the institutional standpoint, the ideas are odious, but we're going to protect the right to free speech. Now, if that speech, to someone's personal beliefs are their personal beliefs, Now, if those beliefs have now become incorporated into the curriculum in ways that are wholly inappropriate, that's a different question altogether. But apparently he walks that line, he observes that bright line.
Took lecture courses from him on circuits,
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Resistors, capacitors, and inductors.
Right.
It's very easy to keep those exclusive.
In this case, yes. But I'm
challenge.
I'm horrified by
the history
it.
Professor, yeah. It was always left hanging for the longest time. I was there in the late 80s, and so I was glad to read this 2006 statement. I was like, finally.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there was something prior to that, but...
Oh, I have no idea. I only know about the Beenan statement itself.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. That is interesting. I wonder if there was an earlier statement. You asked me what a provost does, by the way,
yes.
And I'm happy to answer that. So the provost, and the title most often at universities is provost, but it also could be vice chancellor or vice president for academic affairs, executive vice president, senior vice president of academic affairs, but mostly it's provost. And what all of those titles point to is the task, which is the chief academic officer of the university. Now, the simplest way to put it is that the provost is number 2 at the university. So the president's job, broadly speaking, some places that's the chancellor, just depends on the nomenclature, is to embody the university, to represent the university to the public, to the alumni, to the students, to the faculty and staff, to set the agenda for the university, the vision for the university, and frankly, to be a major fundraiser to be the major fundraiser for the university. The provost's job, I'm simplifying, but is essentially to run the university on a daily basis. Provost's portfolio really do depend on what the president does and doesn't want to do. But generally speaking, the provost, they're always the chief academic officer. So they are the person who has oversight over the academic mission of the university, the academic integrity of the university, et cetera. And generally speaking, they also are the chief, they set the budget for the chief budget allocation officer. Now, someone else is applying the funds and making sure the money gets where it goes, but the authority for the budget comes from the provost office, and the authority for the capital planning for the university, the buildings and such, generally comes from the provost office. Now, that work is done in collaboration with the president, of course, and at Northwestern, the executive vice president, who implements all of these things, a lot of these things. But the provost is the like when the president's out of town, and especially if the president's unreachable, I'm the ex officio head of the university.
I just spoke with the person before this episode, Dr. Teresa Woodruff. She's the named dean of the graduate school.
Yes.
I suppose she had a broad view of leadership across schools. She has issues that would affect all schools, not just the medical school or biochemistry. And so I guess when she's looking, she would just keep looking up and have conversations with you.
Yeah, so she is the dean of the grad school here is this interesting position. All the university deans report to me. So dean of the medical school, dean of McCormick, dean of Medill, dean of the grad school, they report to me. But she, amongst all the deans, is also an associate provost. So, deans are basically developed to think vertically. They think of their school sort of as a silo. And they need to be advocates for their school. Provosts, by orientation, are trained to think horizontally, or cutting across all schools. And because the graduate school as a phenomenon is not based in one place, but based across all places, it makes sense to have that person also be a provost. So she is part of my senior team as associate provost and is also a direct report. She directly reports to me twice, essentially, as dean of the graduate school.
Speaking with her, she was switching hats a lot.
Yes.
Just in that conversation. Very interesting. Backing up a little bit here, after you were speaking about your doctorate work with the 3 from Howard University, and then you spent almost 18 years at Yale in New Haven as a professor of history, African American studies, and American studies. Wow.
Yes.
Also, you served as the dean of Yale College. So, can you reflect on any particular challenges that you may have had as dean of Yale College that would inform your point of view here at your new post?
Oh my gosh, so many different things. So there's one little piece I was left out. It's minor, but I after the PhD, I taught at UC San Diego for 5 years, and then came back to New Haven and joined the faculty at Yale. And I only mention that just to emphasize I've been bi-coastal. I mean, it's just, left, right, left, right, left, right. So, I started on the faculty at Yale, then moved up the ranks, and then ran one of the residential colleges. Used to be called Calhoun College. It was renamed after a good 2 years of tumult. Now it's called Grace Hopper College.
They're having a big conference, Grace Hopper Conference. They're doing a big coding thing for women.
It's an annual women coding conference. Yeah, she was an amazing individual, Grace Hopper. In any event, I ran one of the residential colleges and then did that for 9 years, and then was stepping down to return to the faculty full-time, and I was chairing African American Studies, and I was asked to be the dean of Yale College. And that position covers every aspect of the undergraduate experience from admission to graduation, from application to graduation. So the academic affairs and student affairs were all wrapped up in my office. And in that regard, in just the structural nature of the position, I was very prepared for coming to Northwestern and serving as a provost, because I had purview over so many different aspects of how an undergraduate interacts with the institution and vice versa. In that way, I was prepared to sort of pivot every half hour to a different topic, that and certainly have to do that as provost. Now, the volume of the pace of pivoting and the volume of things I have to deal with has increased exponentially. But just the very fact of going through a day and running from going from one wildly disparate topic to another is a fascinating challenge. You just grow into the habit. Now I'm used to that after years of doing that at Yale. In terms of specific challenges, and we had a lot of, we're living in an era of student unrest on college campuses, and that visited Yale's campus in pretty dramatic ways. And a lot of it was dealing with issues of perceived inequality when it comes to the quality of the Yale student experience, allegations of racial insensitivity, and flawed inadequate levels of administrative attention to issues relating to a increasingly diverse, demographically diverse student body. And this was, there was the very famous student unrest at Mizzou, where a grad student went on a hunger strike, and that spread to Yale. Was really the next major university where that kind of unrest happened. And that was in the fall of 2015. So, and then it kind of it got hijacked. The events at Yale got hijacked by outside groups who were claiming that this was an attack on free speech, when it wasn't at all. But doesn't matter what the truth was. I mean, this is what it got wrapped up in social media. So we really had to deal with student unrest, internal unrest, running along racial lines and social inequality, lines of social inequality, to national hyperventilation about the death of free speech. And I was on the front lines of all of that stuff.
National hyperventilation. I kind of like that phrase.
Oh, I think that's what it is. And so these are the leading issues on campuses these days. Basically, diversity and inclusion, and the threats of concerns about death of, you put in the right introductory phrase, of free speech. Oh, and safe spaces as well. So this is all lived experience for me. And as provost here, I just feel very well prepared to deal with any of those kinds of topics, and I'm frankly asked to speak on those topics around the country, as a matter of fact.
So what is your usual closer? What is the takeaway thing that you would like us your university students and administration to walk around with from the provost?
Well, that they need to understand the provost. I mean, my job is to support the academic integrity and academic mission of the university, which was a research and teaching. That is my animating task, and it's connected to all kinds of ways you think about a university, whether it's fundraising, whether it's facilities, you name it. And my approach to the job is that I'm here to serve the university. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm number 2 at the university, so I'm very high ranking, but my approach is to serve the university. Mm-hmm. My job is to help professors, researchers, teachers do their jobs better. My job is to help make sure the student experience is as great as it possibly can be, and to make sure the facilities available to everybody are the best that they can possibly be. Mm-hmm. When it comes to like policy issues about free speech, my job is to make it clear that free speech is alive and well at Northwestern and other college campuses. If people stop and think carefully about this, what they would realize is a lot of the speech they think is an assault on free speech is actually free speech itself. Yeah. And it's just speech they don't like. Well, if you don't like it, that's tough. That's the nature of free speech.
Welcome to the United States. Yeah.
Yeah. But people don't want to have that kind of honest conversation. So, at Northwestern, this is one of my stump speeches. Basically, is like we are going to be a place that is prepared to deal with really tough conversations, and that conversation means that someone gets to talk and someone has to listen. It has to go both ways, or else you can't have it. And I'll support whoever comes forward. Now, the one thing I'll ask my students in particular is if they're going to bring in, speakers of very strong political positions, that's fine by me as long as they have ideas. A lot of campuses are being hijacked by people who are provocateurs and nothing else. But we need to be better than that. All ideas, substantive ideas, are welcome here. Even if I don't like them, they're still welcome here. That's the point of the university.
Well, the provocateur is maybe just, maybe a form of performance art. They may not have any idea except the one idea of, I'm going to now just make a spectacle here. And
that's the thing. That is their whole modus operandi, to provoke a response. And that's an act of bad faith. And, we need to be better than that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing your views.
No, sure thing.
I kind of went down a couple of thorny paths, but you navigated them.
All in a day's work.
Very adeptly, so I really appreciate that. And it's very nice to hear from the newest Northwestern Provost. I wish you the best in your endeavors, and we'll keep a lookout for your activity and your efforts.
I have a feeling I'll be busy. Now, where in D.C. are you? I didn't realize you were there. I'm in
Northern Virginia, so just.
Oh, okay. I grew up in Potomac, Maryland. My wife and I grew up there.
Oh, okay. So. Yeah. So where you were, you don't cross the bridge, but.
We're on the proper side of the river.
So that's about all the time we have for today. So thank you for your insights and conversation, Jonathan.
You're very welcome.
Thank you all for listening. My guest today has been Provost Jonathan Holloway, and I'm Janet Lee. Please stay tuned for more episodes of Well, Don't Tell the Kids.